There is a page in the Australian National Archives that should not exist. It is a single sheet of paper found in the pocket of a dead man on Somerton Beach in Adelaide on December 1st, 1948. The paper contains 11 lines of text. The text is in code. The code has never been broken. The man has never been identified. The cause of his death has never been established. He has been dead for over 75 years and nobody knows who he is, how he died, or what the paper means. That is the opening. That is entry 13. By the time we reach number 1, you will have encountered 12 cases that are, individually, more disturbing than the Somerton Man cases involving children. Cases involving institutions. Cases involving people who died in front of witnesses and whose deaths were still never explained. Cases that are not cold because they ran out of leads. Cases that are cold because somebody made sure they stayed that way. Stay with me. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. And do not look away. Australia has one of the highest rates of unresolved homicides per capita in the developed world. This is in the data published by the Australian Institute of Criminology. Some unsolved cases involve deaths classified as accidents, suicides, or natural causes that carry enough unresolved evidence to generate sustained doubt. The 13 cases in this video are not the 13 most obscure. They are the 13 most disturbing. Cases where the gap between what is known and what the official finding requires is large enough to drive through. Cases where the families have been fighting for decades. Cases where the investigators who know the files best sleep worst. These are those cases. Number 13. The Somerton Man, Adelaide, 1948. A man was found dead on Somerton Beach in Adelaide on December 1st, 1948. He was well dressed. He had no identification. His cause of death could not be determined by the original autopsy. Toxicological analysis suggested poisoning but could not identify the substance. The labels had been removed from all of his clothing. In a hidden pocket in his trousers, investigators found a small piece of paper. On it were printed 2 words, Tamam Shud. The words are Persian, meaning finished or ended. The paper had been torn from a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a book of Persian poetry. The book from which the page had been torn was eventually found. In the back of it, written in pencil, was a local telephone number and a series of letters that appeared to be a code. The phone number belonged to a woman who denied knowing the man, then partly retracted that denial, and whose daughter, born several months after the man's death, appeared, by DNA analysis conducted decades later, to possibly be his child. The woman never fully explained her connection to the dead man. She died without explaining it. The man has never been identified. His cause of death has never been established. The code on the back of the book has never been broken. DNA analysis in recent years has produced leads that have not yet produced conclusions. He has been in an Adelaide grave since 1949. His headstone reads, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." He remains unknown. Number 12. Phoebe Handsjuk, Melbourne, 2010. On December 2nd, 2010, Phoebe Handsjuk's body was found at the bottom of a rubbish chute in the luxury apartment building where she lived in Melbourne's Toorak. She was 24 years old. She had fallen approximately 12 stories through the chute. The Victorian coroner ruled her death a suicide. The finding has been contested by Phoebe's family ever since. The issues raised by the family and their advocates include the physical dimensions of the chute, which raise questions about whether a person of Phoebe's size could have entered it in the manner the suicide finding implied, the absence of fingerprints on the chute access point, the behavior of the other person present in the apartment on the night of her death, and a broader pattern of conduct that the family argued had not been adequately investigated. Phoebe's partner at the time was Anthony Hampel, a Melbourne barrister from a prominent legal family. He was present in the apartment that night. The investigation was conducted by the Victoria Police. The adequacy of that investigation has been questioned in considerable detail by journalists, advocates, and ultimately by a 2021 parliamentary inquiry in Victoria which found that the original investigation had significant shortcomings. The finding remains suicide. The family remains unconvinced. Phoebe Handsjuk has been in a Melbourne cemetery since December 2010. The case has not been formally reopened. Number 11. Scott Johnson, Sydney, 1988. We have been here before, in the Sydney video. But Scott Johnson's case belongs on this list because it represents something specific, a death that was misclassified not through incompetence, but through a deliberate failure of investigation rooted in the identity of the victim. Scott was an American doctoral student found dead at the base of a cliff at Bluefish Point, near Manly, in September 1988. His death was initially ruled accidental, then suicide. Then, 32 years later, after a sustained campaign by his family and the 2023 SACRA inquiry, it was finally determined to be a hate crime. The 32 years matter. The families of the other people killed in the same area and the same period, the pattern of violence against gay men at Sydney's cliff sites that the SACRA inquiry documented, did not have Scott's family's resources to pursue resolution for 3 decades. How many of those cases have reached any finding? Some. Not all. Scott's case is on this list not because it is unresolved, it is now formally resolved, but because of what it took to resolve it. 32 years. That is the price of a correct finding when the investigation is inadequate from the start. Number 10. Donna Steele, Queensland 1984. On October 23, 1984, Donna Steele was found dead on a property outside Kingaroy in southeastern Queensland. She was 33 years old. She had been missing for several days before her body was discovered. The circumstances of Donna's death were immediately contested. Physical evidence at the scene was inconsistent with the initial theory of suicide. Witnesses had information that was not fully incorporated into the initial investigation. The post-mortem findings raised questions that were noted and not pursued. The case has been reopened and closed multiple times across 4 decades, most recently in broader reviews of Queensland cold cases. What the recurring reopenings demonstrate is that investigators continue to find enough unresolved evidence to justify another look, but not enough to produce a different finding. Donna Steele's family has been pursuing clarity for 40 years. The answer remains, officially, undetermined. Number 9. The Claremont serial killings, Perth, 1996 to 1997. Between January 1996 and March 1997, 3 young women disappeared from the Claremont Entertainment District in Perth. Sarah Spires, Jane Rimmer, and Kira Glennon. Jane and Kira's bodies were found. Sarah's body has never been found. Bradley Robert Edwards was convicted in 2020 of the murders of Jane Rimmer and Kira Glennon. He was not charged with Sarah Spires' murder, insufficient evidence. Her body remains missing. The conviction answered who killed Jane and Kira. It did not answer where Sarah is. The investigation ran for over 20 years before Edwards was identified. Whether opportunities were missed in that time remains a question without a satisfying answer. Sarah Spires would be in her late 40s today. Her family is still looking. Number 8. The Family Murders, Adelaide, 1979 to 1983. 5 young men were murdered in Adelaide between 1979 and 1983 in circumstances that investigators came to believe involved a network of perpetrators rather than a single killer. The victims showed evidence of having been held before their deaths. The bodies showed evidence of posthumous surgical intervention. The pattern of the crimes suggested organization, resources, and multiple participants. Bevan Spencer von Einem was convicted of 1 murder, that of 15-year-old Richard Kelvin, in 1984. He has maintained he did not act alone and has at various points offered to provide further information in exchange for considerations not granted. The full scope of the family murders, how many victims, how many perpetrators, what the posthumous procedures indicated, remains unresolved after 40 years of active investigation. 1 conviction. A surrounding silence that investigators find more disturbing than no information at all. Von Einem is still alive. What he knows will, in all probability, die with him. Number 7. The 1999 Childers Palace Backpacker Hostel Fire, Queensland. On June 23, 2000, a fire at the Childers Palace Backpacker Hostel in Queensland killed 15 people. Drifter Robert Paul Long was convicted of arson and murder and died in prison in 2021. This case is on the list not because the primary conviction is in doubt. Long was convicted after a proper trial. It is on the list because of what the prosecution did not address: the documented fire safety deficiencies at the hostel that had been noted in inspections and not remedied. Fire safety experts who examined the building's records found that a compliant building would not have produced 15 deaths from the same fire. Robert Long killed those people. The conditions that made 15 deaths possible were created by failures of oversight that were never the subject of any criminal finding. 1 person was convicted. The systematic failure that set the conditions for 15 deaths has never faced accountability. Number 6. The Beaumont Children, Adelaide, 1966. On Australia Day 1966, Jane, Anna, and Grant Beaumont, 9, 7, and 4 years old, took a tram from their home to Glenelg Beach. They were seen at the beach. They were seen buying food with money they had not left home with. They were seen with a tall, blonde man. They were never seen again. The Beaumont case has been investigated continuously for nearly 60 years. Multiple suspects identified and eliminated. 2 major excavations at properties associated with the case, one at Castorloy, one at Peterborough, found nothing. The tall, blonde man has never been identified. No arrest has ever been made. Jane Beaumont, if alive, would be in her late 60s. She is almost certainly not alive. 3 children went to the beach in 1966 and did not come home. 60 years later, the case is open. Number 5. Peter Falconio, Northern Territory 2001. On July 14, 2001, Peter Falconio and his partner Joanne Lees were travelling along the Stewart Highway north of Alice Springs when they were flagged down by another vehicle. The driver of the other vehicle shot Peter Falconio. Joanne Lees was tied up and held, but escaped into the bush and was found by passing travellers. Peter Falconio's body has never been found. Bradley John Murdoch was convicted of Peter's murder in 2005, based on Joanne's identification, DNA evidence, and circumstantial evidence. Murdoch has maintained his innocence. Peter Falconio's body has not been found despite searches of the area. Without the body, specific questions about what happened on that highway remain unanswered. Peter Falconio is somewhere in the Northern Territory. His family has never been able to bury him. Number 4. Keisha Abrahams, New South Wales 2010. 6-year-old Keisha Abrahams was reported missing from her home in Mount Druitt, Western Sydney, in August 2010. Her mother Christy Abrahams and stepfather Robert Smith were convicted of her manslaughter in 2013. Keisha's body has never been found. Without a body, the precise circumstances of Keisha's death were never established. The conviction for manslaughter rather than murder reflected the limitations imposed by the absence of physical evidence about how she died. Keisha is on this list not because of doubt about who was responsible, but because of what her case represents in terms of the systems that should have protected her. Keisha had been known to Child Protection Services. Concerns about her welfare had been noted. She died. Her body has never been found. The reforms announced after her death were, by the assessment of child protection advocates, implemented incompletely. The system that failed her has been reformed. Whether it has been reformed enough is a question that data on child deaths in out-of-home care in New South Wales continues to answer. Number 3. Ms Dhu, Western Australia 2014. On August 4, 2014, a 22-year-old Doomadgee woman named Ms Dhu, whose full name is used with permission of her family, who have asked that it be spoken, died in police custody in South Headland, Western Australia. Ms Dhu had been taken into custody for unpaid fines totalling approximately $1,000. She was held in the South Headland police station lockup. Over 2 days, she told officers she was in pain. She was taken to South Headland Hospital twice. She was returned to the lockup both times. She died of septicemia from a broken rib she had sustained in a domestic violence incident, an injury that medical staff and police had repeatedly failed to properly assess. The Western Australian coroner found that the medical treatment Ms Dhu received was substandard. She found that officers had shown a lack of care and compassion. She made recommendations about the treatment of people in custody. No police officer was charged with any offence in connection with Ms Dhu's death. No medical professional faced any finding of professional misconduct. Ms Dhu was taken into custody for $1,000 in unpaid fines. She spent 2 days telling people she was sick. She died of an untreated injury. Her family have been fighting for accountability since August 2014. They have not received it. Ms Dhu is on this list because her death was not an accident. It was the product of specific decisions made by specific people. Those people have not faced criminal accountability. And the conditions that produced her death, the criminalisation of poverty through fine enforcement, the failures of duty of care in police custody, the specific quality of care available to Aboriginal people in the Western Australian justice system, remain insufficiently addressed. She was 22 years old. She should not be dead. Number 2. The Wanda Beach Murders, New South Wales 1965. On January 11, 1965, 2 teenage girls, Christine Sharrock, 15, and Marion Schmidt, 15, were murdered on Wanda Beach at Cronulla in southern Sydney. They had been on the beach with Marianne's younger siblings. They went for a walk. They did not return. Their bodies were found nearby. Both had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. No one has ever been charged with their murders. 60 years. Multiple investigations. Multiple persons of interest identified and eliminated. The girls' families have been waiting for 60 years. Marianne's younger siblings, who were present on the beach that day, have grown old waiting for an answer. Someone killed Christine Sharrock and Marion Schmidt on Wanda Beach in 1965 and never faced any consequence. They are almost certainly dead. The case is still open. The families are still waiting. Number 1. The death of Mulrunji Doomadgee, Queensland, 2004. On November 19, 2004, Mulrunji Doomadgee, a 46-year-old Murrawari man, was arrested on Palm Island after being observed walking on the road and singing. He was taken to the Palm Island police station. Within an hour of his arrest, he was dead. The autopsy found that Mulrunji had suffered injuries consistent with a forceful impact to the abdomen, for broken ribs and a ruptured liver. He was alone in a cell with Senior Sergeant Chris Hurley. Senior Sergeant Hurley was charged with manslaughter. He was acquitted. The acquittal produced riots on Palm Island. The rioters who burned the police station were arrested and charged. Many of them were convicted. The police officer whose actions preceded Mulrunji's death was acquitted. A subsequent inquest found that Hurley had caused Mulrunji's death. The finding of the inquest and the outcome of the criminal trial are formally inconsistent. Mulrunji Doomadgee was arrested for singing on the road. He was dead within an hour. The man who was alone with him when he sustained fatal injuries was acquitted. This case is number 1 not because it is the most mysterious, it is the least mysterious. The facts are largely agreed. The outcome of the criminal process is what it is. It is number 1 because of what it demonstrates about the gap between what happened and what the legal system produced. Australia has a long list of people who have died in police custody. The disproportionate representation of Aboriginal people on that list is documented, studied, and the subject of repeated inquiry. The rate of deaths in custody has not declined since the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody delivered its findings in 1991. He was singing. He was arrested. He died. The man who was alone with him when he sustained fatal injuries was acquitted. Australia's most disturbing unsolved mystery is not the Somerton Man's coded paper. It is not the identity of the Beaumont children's killer. It is the pattern that connects the last entry on this list to the second last and the third last and continues backward through decades of documented deaths and documented inadequate responses. That pattern is not mysterious. It is documented. It is in the Royal Commission reports and the coroner's findings and the parliamentary inquiries and the advocacy of the families who have been fighting longer than most of this video's audience has been alive. What is mysterious is not the facts. What is mysterious is the distance between the facts and the accountability. Australia's 13 most disturbing cases are on the record. The record is public. The question is not whether the information is available. The question is whether anyone is listening. Share this video. Subscribe. And listen to the families. See you in the next one.